If you wanted to know the humble origins of Neapolitan and Roman Torchwick, this video is not for you because this is a non-spoiler review of RWBY Roman Holiday. You guys see what I did there? Okay, there's no spoilers in this video. It's a review, but there are no spoilers. You will not hear.
You won't learn about how Neo was secretly Osmond's daughter.
Anyway. Hello, everybody. It is Calaxin and Hunter. Good day, I should say. Good day, everybody. It is Calaxin and Hunter. We are reviewing Roman Holiday today. All right, so Hunter and I read this over the weekend because Indigo does not care about street date at all. They just threw street date out the window. We got it a week early from Indigo. And I want to preface that, like, we didn't get the book from Rooster Teeth. They don't give us anything. I don't know why, but they don't seem to... If we don't buy it, who will, I guess.
Indigo and Chapters, which is, if you're not a Canadian, basically our versions of Barnes and Noble.
They did not give it to us early is what I'm trying to say.
They just put it out like a week early.
Yeah, Indigo put it out a week early.
I pre-ordered it. I have 2 copies of that book now.
And you got it early too, even though you pre-ordered it. It came to you on Friday. So yeah, this was on the shelf last Tuesday, if you guys are seeing this Tuesday when the book is releasing. So we are here to answer a couple questions about the book, basically, to kind of like, you know, to incentivize you guys on like what's in it, so you can know like, oh, if Roman's backstory isn't in it, I don't want it. Well, luckily for you, Roman's backstory is in the book. But first, let's just go over our general thoughts, because I feel like that this is going to be a bit interesting. I have to say that as I was reading most of the book, I did not get like the same like giddy feeling that I got when I had read Before the Dawn or After the Fall. But I will argue that I think it was on purpose, because again, we aren't going to go into like major spoilers, but I will say, I guess, is that like Neo's life at the beginning of the book is kind of sad and really a little boring, to be honest, but I think that that's kind of the point, because I found myself kind of going through and being like, oh man, I wish this was a Roman chapter, like, you know, get through the Neo and go to Roman for some of it, right, for the beginning of the book. But I feel like that was almost the point, because the entire point is that she's unhappy in her current circumstances, and that like the life that Roman has is the more exciting and glamorized life. So I think that that was like, it was almost the intention to make you kind of like read the Neo chapters and be like, bro, like, you know what I mean? Like this girl's life is not very, this is deeply sad.
It's like Matilda.
Yeah, basically.
It really is kind of Matilda, actually,
and so,
think about it.
I don't know. I think that that's my explanation. Because at first I was like, is this book... I know that this is obviously subjective, but I was like, do I not like it? Do I think that it's bad? I don't think that that's it. I think that the reason I didn't feel that same giddy feeling was because, like, in After the Fall and Before the Dawn, things are, like, happening, right? Like, things are constantly, you know, we're on the move, we're fighting Grimm, we're hearing backstory,
it's
but
a lot more slower paced.
Yeah, exactly, right? But I feel like, yeah, that's kind of the point, is to be like, oh yeah, Neo's life sucks. Let's get out of here. Like, you want to get out of here with them. It's not that the book is, it's not that the book is boring, it's that Neo situation and you want to see her get out of it kind of thing. I don't know how to explain it.
I think that this is part of it. I wanted to see Neo and Roman interact, and this isn't a spoiler, but they only really meet each other about halfway through the book. Yeah. So I feel like a lot of that, like the first half of the book feels especially slow to me, because it's just them, like Neo has to age like a decade
basically
over. So it's just, I feel like I had high expectations for this book, even more than the last 2 RWBY books, because I think I just especially love Roman and especially Neo, more so than Team Coffee or Team Sun. And I had this very particular idea of what I wanted from it. I wanted them to be like Roman the upstart meet like Neo, this like nameless, faceless, historyless orphan, and they have this really madcap adventure that
that's not exactly what happened.
But that's not, like, that's not what we got. So part of me is like, well, am I mad at this book for being bad, or am I just mad at it for not being this very specific thing that I wanted?
Yeah, that's something to consider too as well. And so I think like what you're getting at is you had expectations and it didn't meet the expectation because you had built it up in your head so much. I guess what I'm talking about is I kind of went into it with, I don't want to say no expectation, but I had no particular, like, backstory in mind that I particular... And then we saw the first chapter right in the preview, so we kind of knew what was almost going on, like, you know, type of situation. But I feel it's more like I don't know. It's very difficult, like the feeling to explain. But at first, as I was reading, I was getting a little worried. I guess, you know what I mean? I was like, oh no, this book is not like, but then as I like kept going, I kind of like got like, oh, well, maybe some of that, like that's the point, right? And that being the point doesn't necessarily automatically make it good, but looking at it through like that lens, I understood it more. I understood why every single chapter wasn't like, you know, like mind-blowing.
Because I think what I wanted is like a really fast-paced, madcap book, but they didn't want to make that. They wanted to make a book that really fleshed out the backgrounds of these characters.
Yeah, exactly.
But part of me
we
was
do
like...
get into madness in like the second half. Like the second half is basically heist time, right? That's when things start getting like
That's when I started really liking the book a lot more, and I kind of wished that was the whole of the book.
Or maybe they segmented it during the heist. They went back in time, like maybe during like...
Kind of like those before
Again, we're trying to be vague about the heist stuff, right? But like maybe instead of chronological, they could have started with Neo and Roman meeting each other or doing the thing and then threw in little bits of the backstory
Which is what they did with the with like the last two books. It showed the story of Team Coffee and then interdispersed with that was some
backstory, right? And so maybe it was just the chronological order. I feel like that's, I guess, what I will say is I do feel like I'll just throw out a rating because I don't want people to be like, oh my god, they're 6 minutes in and the book's bad. Like, no. Like, the book is like, I would say it's like an 8 or like a 7.5. Like, I didn't love it as much as like the other ones, but I definitely like still enjoyed it. It's just one of those things where it's paced differently. Like, it's paced a lot differently compared to the previous book. So if I had to give like a review, I would say that like the beginning was kind of like slow, right? And there was also, I feel like that we kind of have a genre problem, and this is something that I was thinking about last night that I really wanted to say, is that when you are writing for a teenage girl, obviously they do teenage girl things, and sometimes those teenage girl things are not very as interesting as the crime lord things, right? So there's a chapter where, again, I'll be
it's like if you took
okay, so this
The
is
Godfather and interdispersed with it with
Mean Girls,
yeah,
right?
Mean
That's how I
Girls.
feel. And Mean Girls is great. Like, Mean Girls is fire. But I'm saying, like, I don't know how to explain this. I'm trying to think.
They're like a tonal shift.
Neo does an action in 2 different chapters. She goes on the same outing, let's just call it. She goes on the same outing in 2 different chapters, and I was like, what are we doing here? And in one of the outings, she meets a bunch of these characters, and those characters are irrelevant, and they never come up again. Like, they just basically appear, I guess, again, I'm trying to be vague, but they appear to bully her, and then they fuck off, right? I don't remember what chapter it was, but like, you know, she goes on this outing, and then that happens, and then we kind of like peter off. So, you know, there was a lot of high school drama mixed in with the actual Roman crime, which is fine. But I feel like that would probably throw a lot of people off as well if they expected, again, heist, and instead they got like basically, because like Matilda and Mean Girls, they're great guys, right? Like, I'm not, you know, we're not shading the queens, but it feels
like,
you know, it's definitely 2 different things, right?
I said that as a joke, but the Neo portions really do feel like Matilda, because it's an especially talented girl that's not appreciated by her family, who tries to then break out and find people who do appreciate her.
Exactly, right? So it's kind of like almost as if they tried to do a more grounded, like, high school coming of age, like, type thing, like, you know, school and like life sort of thing, and then Roman's like, I'm doing the crimes, right? And so it's very interesting, and so that's why that may throw, I don't want to make, you know, generalizations, but the RWBY fan base, I feel, has a considerably, probably a larger audience of men, because my channel also has a larger audience of men that watch RWBY videos, and this book is written, in my opinion, maybe for like a YA teenage girl. And most books, right, are written in mind for teenage girls in YA, I would argue, right? Not saying that that's like, you know what I mean? Not saying that that's right per se, but like, you know, in terms of marketing, people still think like if you're writing a young adult book, your target demographic is women, but then RWBY, right, I think, has, I would say, probably a pretty equal audience, but for some reason, like, most of the people that watch our RWBY content are men, so I don't know, right? And so just keeping that in mind, I feel like that this was kind of written, you know, for like, you know, a young girl that likes to read YA.
I don't know if I totally agree with
I don't know. Like, I feel like that's how it was written. I'm not saying that you won't enjoy it if you're a guy, but I feel like a lot of guys are gonna look at like this, you know, this like
the early Neo
portions where she's, you know, has this basically encounter with a couple of Heathers. You know what I mean? And like they're just gonna be like, I walked into a high school drama movie of some sort. You know,
this is more Riverdale than
exactly. It's a bit more Riverdale, right?
Riverdale's my favorite anime.
Yeah, exactly. And so again, I'm not trying to do that to like, you know, I don't like to make like this is for girls, this is for boys, because really like no, like nothing is divided that way. But in terms of demographics, right? Like in terms of businesses still think that way, I guess. And so that's probably something to keep in mind, because I don't know how many, I just don't know how many guys are going to be like, oh, you know, this, like, I'm thinking very particular scenes, and I'm just like, I don't know if people are going to find this very compelling to them or relatable, I guess, right? I don't know.
I had one issue with Neo, and it kind of, I felt the same way about Neo in this book as to an extent I felt about Cinder in the show proper. Yeah. And that part of it, Neo's allure, and something I think they get right with Roman in the book, is that she's mysterious. Yeah. You don't quite know her motivations.
Well, now
You don't quite know her backstory. Now we know all of her motivations and backstories. And I get that that's what they wanted to do. And it works because like you realize like, oh, with the kind of upbringing she has, it totally makes sense why Neo
is like, the way she is.
Is kind of basically a psychopath and is also really attached to Roman. It all makes a lot of sense. But part of what I loved about her was how enigmatic she was, and you kind of lose that. Whereas Roman, he's also pretty enigmatic, and you really don't learn much about him. Like, other than, like, a very vague backstory. And I kind of wish they also did that with Neo.
Well, I think the problem with Neo is that her family was a part of the plot. Yeah, and so we couldn't get rid of them, you know what I mean?
The book is really called Roman Holiday, but it's really more of a Neo book.
Well, no. Well, somebody did ask this, so we did ask for questions, actually.
They both have character
Somebody asked, like, how is the book divided? It basically, there's 26 chapters, and it goes either or. So I think it's pretty equally split. Like, some of the chapters are divided shorter or, like, longer, you know, but it's pretty even.
And I shouldn't say that. Right? I think the plot is equally pushed by Neo and Roman.
Yes. I thought it was more of a Roman book. I got the totally opposite idea from you. I thought that it was more like Roman, because Roman's, I don't know how to explain it.
He's the one bringing all the criminals together.
Roman's the one bringing all of the action to Neo. Neo just kind of stumbles in on it by accident, right? Again, it's kind of hard to explain without getting into spoilers, right? Because we're trying to do, you know, just our thoughts on the book as vaguely as possible so you guys can make like a purchase decision, right? And so I guess like that, that did not bother me as much. I actually really liked how they wrote Neo in the book. They tackled her muteness very well. Like, lots of people were worried about that. They did not fuck it up, in my opinion.
They brought up some really interesting stuff that was kind of niche. I mean, I don't know a lot about people with muteness, but from what I do know, they do bring up some pertinent topics that I think was interesting. I really liked the writing.
They didn't, like, I guess could be a spoiler, but they didn't, like, she talked at the end of the book, and it was like she just chooses not to. Like, they made it like that she can't, and that it's not a choice, and like, fuck you for thinking that it is, right? Because that is something that reoccurs throughout the book, right?
And part of, I think, why Neo respects Roman so much is that Roman, or why Neo likes Roman so much, is that Roman does respect her and her muteness. Where everyone else wants to change her, Roman just thinks she's neat.
Yeah, exactly. And like, also they have like such good like chemistry together throughout the book. Like, when they are together, they bounce off of each other really well. Roman understands her very well, and I felt like it was really seeing them together, like back in the day when they're both like, I think Neo is 18 and Roman's like 23.
Neo's 18 by the end of the book.
Yeah, and so like, you know, in those chapters when they're together, because I think that like, chronologically, when they meet for the first time, she's 18, and again, he's like, I don't know, he's like in his 20s, he's like 22, 23 or something like that. And so like, just seeing like these two kids, you know, before they grew up and got eaten by griffins and, you know, all of that.
Or yeeted into a new dimension.
Or yeeted into new dimensions.
Because I feel like I've been negative, but I did really like the writing. Like, I feel like he got... E.C. Myers got Roman and Neo's voice really well.
Yeah, exactly. You know? Like that... Like, despite
Neo's like the right amount of sassy. Roman's the right amount of sassy.
Despite the other issues, I guess, like Roman's like Oh, I wrote down so many of his lines as because I was like, oh, I want to bring this up in like the spoiler discussion, right? Even like with Neo, they did like her very well, right? Like I think that they did a good job. I will say like the book did get a little corny with some of the character names. I don't think that these are spoilers, but we have like, what was it? Rock Salt and Candy Floss.
I was like, that's the name of a My Little Pony.
There's Brick and Mortar, and then there's a couple other characters. Like with Neo's parents, because this is not a spoiler, this was in the preview, whatever. They call them Jimmy and Caramel, and I'm like, that's cute because that's sprinkles and caramel. You put that on ice cream.
Oh,
that's nice.
I didn't realize that.
Noah actually had an editing note last time we recorded when that came out, so that's fine. But like then the names just got more like again the rock salts thing.
I
love it. I love it, but I
salt.
kind of you know what I mean.
Like
I love it, but at the same time I'm kind of like. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's I don't know. It's like it's like a guilty pleasure type thing.
Yeah.
I love these
Listen,
names,
we made the rule that everyone has to have fucking color names, and we're sticking to
have
it.
Fun with it, right? And so, yeah, that was the one thing where I was like, some of the characters' names, I was just like, I love it, but I'm also like, really?
One thing that I realized that this book was quite different than the other book is that last 2 times we read these books to do videos for them, I kept notes about all of the new canon stuff. With this one, I really didn't do that.
Oh, I did. There was a lot of world building, actually. Like, it was pretty subtle.
Yeah, because it was world building. Like, you saw more places in Vale, but I felt it was less gratuitous, or like, it was less than the earlier books. Because we had never been to Vacuo or Shade.
That's probably true.
Whereas here, it's like, well, we know most of these players.
But there was some interesting stuff about Mistral that we didn't know. There was interesting stuff about Vale that we didn't know. So that was pretty interesting.
I liked it. I felt like the world was interesting.
The only thing that I found was kind of weird, and I guess this goes back to like, like we're getting into like high school drama thing, but kind of different, is like RWBY's a fantasy world, but there's like video games and sleeping pills and psychiatry. Like, I get it, but it's kind of like Remnant. I always thought of Remnant kind of differently, but the more we go through the series, I realize that Remnant is just Earth if we had monsters. Like, we would have eventually got into video games. We would have, eventually got into sleeping pills and psychiatry as a profession.
We see them playing video games in the show.
Like, Roman has a real estate agent at one point, and I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I know they played video games at one point. Video games are fine, but it was some of the other stuff where I was just like, oh, like Remnant's like for normal people, Remnant's just kind of Earth. You know what I mean? Remnant's Earth with more monsters. Like, people still have mortgages, okay?
They're all the NPCs.
You know, they probably have to pay for their health care still. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. That kind of... and I don't think that that's, like, E.C. Myers' fault, right? That's how, like, Miles and Carrie designed things, right? But it kind of hit me.
People are driving cars.
Yeah, it kind of hit me. That,
there's, like, they talk about a coffee chain.
Remnant is sci-fi fantasy in the sense that there's still, like, technology.
It's kind of like how Shrek was fantasy, but also people like there was like medieval burger joints and fast food restaurants.
That's how it feels.
It was a little
right? And so that's the only thing where like I don't remember what it was, but they were talking about something, and I was just like, oh, like Remnant's just fantasy Earth with some grim, instead of like, I don't know, I feel like they could have done like, instead of sleeping pills, it could have been like, I don't know,
magic potion,
dust pill thingy, like, you know what I mean? Like, they got very there was a lot of weird technology, I guess, that I was just like, this kind of feels like too much real world. Or like at one point there's a shoplifting, I guess again, I'm trying not to like go into it, but there's a shoplifting situation.
I don't know if you know this about Roman, he steals stuff sometimes. That might be important in the book.
The character that is shoplifting, I'll try to still be vague, comments on the metal tags on the clothes, and I was just like, y'all couldn't have made that, like, I don't know, dust or something? Like, it's like, I know that there's not, like, dust for literally everything, but it just seemed kind of like, because there's metal in Remnant, are there fossil fuels in Remnant? Like, dust is the main source, but is there oil? Like, is there big oil in Remnant? You know what I'm saying?
Is there ExxonMobil in Remnant?
And so that was the kind of weird part.
Are the Atlesian ice caps melting in Remnant?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Because, like, for some of the stuff, I was just like, oh, like, that's weird. Like, I wish that and again, this isn't E.C. Myers, this is none of his, right? And so I just wish that whoever made those choices, I guess,
it's just the thing where it's like, don't think about it too much.
But what if we make the metal detectors, magic dust, and the dust explodes if you try to shoplift from the shop? I don't know.
That doesn't help anything.
It rubs together and goes boom, like, I don't know. Or like, just some of the stuff I was just like, this is a little too real. I don't know, like. Yeah.
I guess it does feel weird when people are fighting monsters and have magic powers.
Yeah, like one minute people are fighting monsters and then the next minute,
guess it's like a contemporary
like this guy's just like,
sci-fi.
I just graduated this year, and I'm just like, oh, so there's normal school? We've never seen a normal school before.
There's
like this guy graduated to be a banker, and I'm just like, bro, where did you go to school, sir? Like at least with My Hero Academia, they were kind of like, you go to a hero school, but you can do hero business, hero support, hero, right? So at least the bank teller guy, he could have been like, Beacon Bank Division of like Beacon Accountant or
Beacon
something.
School of Finance.
Exactly. And so there were just like,
God, I hated those stupid anime protagonists always like running around thinking they're hot shit, turning their scythes into sniper rifles.
God. But those were,
I have Excel spreadsheets. Can you do that?
It was just some of those little things where I was just kind of like, oh. Poor
but
Roman.
I feel like that's...
But then they still have to pay, like, Roman has to put a down payment on a condo. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm just like, I don't know how I wish things were different.
I feel like
I wish it was different.
a lot of the backstory stuff and a lot of that stuff just feels like nitpicky in general.
I know it does. But
the writing was good.
I just wish for things, Hunter.
The scenes were exciting. It got better after the halfway point, but it was a little slow at the beginning. And I loved the kind of both Neo and Roman go through a kind of character arc that feels appropriate for them.
I agree.
And as much,
I'm glad too, because something that you, I think, had brought up was, how are they going to do a character arc when, like, they're in the show having their own character? You know what I mean? Like, because obviously Neo is having an arc. Yeah. So how do you make Neo grow and change enough for her to, like, have an arc for the book? But I feel like they did that very well. And even with Roman, they had him go through, like, a little thing.
His own.
I really liked Roman's little thing.
Yeah.
Right,
because he was cute. It was. That's what I loved so much about Roman's characters, that you get the impression that, like, he doesn't want to admit to liking people and wanting attachments to people because he's been abandoned so much in his life.
Trust issue Roman time,
Roman.
And so
he learns to love. Like, I think it's really great. And I think Neo comes from, like, this really, like, once again, I don't think this is big spoilers. It's like this kind of, like, hurt, unsure little girl to, like, a kind of self-assured psychopathic criminal. Yeah. But she's self-assured, I respect people.
They're not good guys, right? And
they're not good people.
I want to answer some questions now, I guess. There were some rumors about, like, Roman being a P word or something. Those just weren't true. Like, I'm pretty sure that people just made it up for discourse. Like, you could not read this book and take away, because people were saying that Roman, like, groomed Neo from a child. Like, he didn't even know her until she was 18. In the book. Yeah, and so, like, what the fuck were y'all on about? Like, some people were saying he flirted with the Malachite twins. Like, there's only 2 instances where I could see that that's kind of misconstrued. One character asks if one of the twins is Roman's new girlfriend, and Malachite, like, the girl says, ew, and then Roman's like, no, like, what the fuck, bro? You know what I mean? Like, no, like, I'm their babysitter. Like, what the fuck are you doing? You know what I mean? So there's that where they both reject the idea, because Roman's just like, he calls them brats multiple times. Like, you know what I mean? He doesn't see, like, he's not flirting with them at all, right? And then there's another line where he says something about, like, oh, if you wanted to dance, you could have just asked, but, like, they're fighting. It's combat. I hope that's not too big of a spoiler, but they're fighting. And so that's combat. That's not he's not flirting. He did not flirt with the twins when they were underage. He didn't flirt with them at all, right? They were trying to
kill each other.
So that's and then with the Neo stuff, like, she's 18 and he's like 23 or something. If people have, like, a problem with that age gap, like, listen, I'm not here to debate that. I'm just saying that she's, like, she's 18 and there's not really any romance at all.
Honestly, like, she's 18 and I would be nervous about Roman being in a relationship with her, seeing the things she does.
Exactly. Like, if anything, Roman's the one that should be like, right?
Roman should be afraid.
No. And so, there was no super dark, like, Roman's a creep in the book, like some people thought. I don't know why people thought that. It was not there. I don't think people thought that. I think people wanted to spread fake discourse before the book even came out. So, no, nothing creepy happened in the only creepy, there is one character that, like, what do you call it? Like, looks at Neo skeevily? Yeah. What do you call it when guys do
looks
that
up and then checks her out?
Yeah, checks her out.
But he's a bad guy.
And so somebody tells the bad guy, she's 18, bro. Like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? So I'm assuming that character was older. So they tell another character off for doing that, and Roman's, like, not even there. So it was just some, like, side character was creeping on Neo, and they denounce it right away. And so, I don't know. Anyway, I just wanted to say that because a lot of people like saw
they
that.
They seemed when they wrote that book, they were aware that could have been an issue,
exactly,
so they purposefully avoided
so
it.
they didn't make them meet until they were all adults, and then also the fact that like they're still both within the same age range, like they're both they're both young adults at that time in the book. Okay, does Neo ever talk? No.
She gets creative. I love that they're able to carry on dialogue.
Yes.
It's not dialogue, but communication without
they did
speaking
a really
very
good
well.
job. I liked how they kind of took the stuff that they did with Fox, like the Ada assistant, and they kind of like give Neo kind of, it's basically just voice to text,
but it's also like
but
sometimes
she commentates on it. I think, again, if this isn't a spoiler, at one point she's like, I hate this fucking thing. Like, I hate how it makes me sound. I hate the robot voice, right?
Which
like,
is the thing that many mute people have. Like, there's a charity where you can donate audio of your voice and an AI will turn it into a usable kind of speech.
So you're not like a robot, or it's not,
mute people.
Cringe, I guess you could say.
So you don't sound like
Google text-to-speech isn't cringe.
So that like a 7-year-old girl doesn't sound like Stephen Hawking.
Exactly. And so does it provide any new evidence for fan theories? Yes, but not really with Neo and Roman, more so with like side characters. I do want to make a video about that. I will say it's the Malachites that there could be a theory that I would like to make. Could you see what happened in the book being brought up on or having an effect on volume 9?
I guess
sort of, but not like that they're gonna be like, ha 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 ha, here was Neo's childhood. It's more about like what Roman meant to her is the important takeaway of the book. Not necessarily her childhood, because by the end of the book, she's kind of like, fuck, like, you know what I mean? Like, fuck that part of her life.
Yeah, she burned some bridges, to put that lightly.
And so, keeping that in mind, right, I feel like the effect it'll have on volume 9 is like
a deepening.
You don't understand, like, Roman was the only person who ever understood and cared about me, and da-da-da-da-da. Like, that's, and we kind of already knew that, but this definitely, like,
it expanded on it. You get an appreciation for what it was like. You don't have to read the book and still get that when it probably brings it up.
Somebody else asked, does this book have relevance to the main plot? No.
Not really.
I don't think it will. Anyway, if I read the book, will my enjoyment and understanding of the main show increase? I think so. Yes. I think that I would argue that, especially for Neo's portion, and then seeing if you want to rewatch volumes 1 to 3, I think you would enjoy Roman a bit more, like knowing where he came from. But I feel like that your enjoyment will increase by reading the book. It won't decrease if you don't.
I recommend the book. My one thing is that part of what I loved about Neo, and I went on this already, is that she's enigmatic. We don't know about her. And with this book, you learn everything. So I almost wonder, if you want to keep that mystery, don't read the book. But honestly, learning about her background, it works.
Yeah.
So you should be okay.
So it's basically your choice. You won't be confused if you don't read the book, because they have already gone into
supplementary
why
material.
she feels so strongly about Roman. But if you want to know why, and like the psychological reasons why, like that's in there, right? Do they explain how Neo's hair is half pink? Yes. Do we learn where she got her training? Yes. Do we learn her age? Yes, but not necessarily in relation to the main show. Like, we see her age over time, and so we can presume that if by the end of the book, Neo is 18 and Roman's like 22 or whatever we were saying before, like in the main show, I would say it's only like 5 years later, because like Ozpin's still the headmaster, Lionheart's still the headmaster. I would say that if anything in the main show, Roman is like 27 and Neo is whatever like -5 is from 27, like 23, 22, type of thing. And so we don't know, but like
I think they kept it purposefully vague, so like hypothetically, if they wanted to make it, in terms
of how how long the end of the book is in between the show. Does that make sense? Right? And so they could probably do a sequel where Roman and Neo do another heist before the main like RWBY like plot line happens. And so we don't really have a point of reference for if it's like, oh, well, you know, does this happen? Does the end of this book happen a year before Team RWBY gets involved?
We don't know.
Right? We don't know.
It just happens before, an indeterminate amount of time before he ever gets involved in the White Fang or with Cinder.
Yeah, exactly. I would say, though, that Roman does not look 23, right? Like, by the time we see him in the show, I don't think he looks 23.
So it could have been a decade, it could have been, who knows?
Yeah, so, like, I feel like that if anything, Roman is supposed to be, again, those late 20s, kind of like 30, which would make Neo, again, like 22, 23, 24, 25 or something. Yeah. So Neo, kind of old, I guess. You know what I mean?
Older now, I suppose.
Older now, right? How long is the book? The book is about 300 pages.
It was a short read.
Some people said if it was worth, it wasn't a I read it all in one day, but like that was
okay. I didn't because I paced myself, but I felt like it was. It took like
8 hours, probably. Like you know, so it was like 8, 9. So right, it was $13.99.
It's not War and Peace,
right? Like you know, that's like $1 an hour for your enjoyment, right? So it's like you know what I mean. This is cheaper than a movie ticket, right? Like you get more hours, right, than you would going to the movie. So technically, is it worth the price? Yeah, I think that it's definitely worth the asking price, right? Like paperbacks are. I'm not gonna like assume anything about anyone's financial situation, but they're kind of cheap. Like $13.99, $10.99 is relatively cheap for a book. I would say
compared to like a new release hardcover.
There's audiobook. There's the ebook should be cheaper, right? So there are other purchasing options, but I think it's worth the price. I mean, I think this is, I guess, like a controversial take. I think all books are usually worth. If it's a good book, all books will inherently be worth more of the price compared to something like something like a movie. Like I feel like that I've gotten a lot more enjoyment and length.
I've certainly regretted buying more video games and movie tickets than I have books.
Yeah, exactly, right? I mean, a game you can argue that's like playable, so there's like it's not really compared. But I'm just saying, like in terms of like the amount of money I've spent on books versus going to the movie theater and seeing a movie.
I feel like this is a really weird way to dissect like. You can like say like
I don't
apples,
know how to explain it.
Like X number of apples for X number of dollars. I don't know if art's the same way. But.
Yeah, I know it's not. But I'm just saying that like I don't think I've regretted too many books that I've bought. Where sometimes I'm like, yeah, I paid $20 for this 2-hour movie, and the movie was a little sus. You know what I mean? So I think that like we're doing okay here with the books.
I did pay full price to see Cats in the theater.
I know, and so that's what you can make worse financial decisions. Is what I'm telling you.
It could be me.
I think that it's definitely worth the price. Now, is it worth the same as another book? Like, if you had to choose between two books, is it like, I don't know. Like, that's
if you
your
like
choice,
RWBY,
right?
If you like kind of like those, I wouldn't know what, I guess you'd say YA fantasy.
Yeah.
It's like a mixture of contemporary fantasy and YA fantasy.
I think something to keep in mind, right, is that this is a YA book. Right? And YA books come in all different shapes and sizes, but it is kind of leaning more towards like younger YA and like shorter YA than longer YA.
But this is much of a spoiler. It does get dark at places.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just saying in terms of length, like if you were to be like, oh Cal, should I buy this or should I buy the Song of Achilles? I'll be like, I don't know. Well,
that definitely,
rock, paper, scissors.
That one definitely leans more to Harry Potter than it does to The Hate You Give. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In the realm of young adult books.
Sure. Is the plot well set out? Did you find it easy to understand what was going on? Yes. Are there loads and loads of characters? Kinda.
I mean, a few.
They introduce like a lot of side characters.
But they're minor. They're not a big deal.
They're not super important. Not all of them, but some of them.
There's only like one or two or three new characters.
No.
That are like, because I'm thinking the lady.
Sure.
You know what that means, and then Neo's parents.
I
think are the three new characters that are important.
There are a lot of side characters.
But a lot of side characters.
But you'll be okay. Do you think the main conflicts were resolved in a satisfying way?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that they did a really
I was like,
good
this
job.
makes sense. I like how these two idiots like have each other now and they can go off and be awful crime people together. It works really well.
Do you think that it expands upon the existing RWBY canon in interesting ways? Yes. I would say so. Like, there's a very interesting world building situation.
We get a lot more of an idea of what Veil is like,
how things are run, how society works. Oh, that was the other thing I was thinking. There was something in the book that, again, maybe this goes in the nitpicking section of things, but Remnant's supposed to be an equal society, right? Like, there's not supposed to be sexism.
At this point, does that even count anymore?
I know, that's what I'm asking, right? So there was something in the book, and I won't say what it was, but Hunter knows what it was, and I was just like, would this even exist? Because I could kind of see the argument that regardless of sexism, rich people would want to let's just say send their kids to boarding school. Let's just call it. I guess this is where we're teetering on spoilers if you really want to bow out. But there's a boarding school for girls in the book, and it teaches girls certain things that
proper,
seem
like,
to be
womanly manners.
Exactly, and
like,
cooking and sewing and it kind of subverts that later. But while I was reading it, I was like, why would this exist in Remnant? There's not supposed to be sexism.
Yeah.
So where are the boys cooking and sewing and being...
And maybe they do, but they don't present it like their boys are doing the exact same thing.
Exactly. And so that seemed a little... Again, this is what I mean by this book feels like it was on Earth with a couple of monsters and not necessarily Remnant. Like, some of this stuff was... Because listen, if there's a boys' school where they also do cooking and sewing and shit, like, I'll be like, okay, great. But that was never addressed, and I was
the
like...
The Male Wife Academy.
Right? And so, like, that's the only thing where I was confused, is that there were, like, gendered elements in the book. I don't know if it was even ever confirmed that Remnant's supposed to have no sexism, okay? Like, that was something from a while ago.
Yeah,
that,
I don't
like,
know if
I don't
they even
know
consider
if that's
it
supposed
anymore.
to be, yeah, so that was the only thing where I was just like... But, like, in terms of the City of Vale, we learn a lot. It does expand on Neo in an interesting way, and then, like, if, you know, because Vale was just kind of, like, again, some cutouts of apartment buildings and stuff we saw it in the show.
I would describe
so now, you know.
that, like, if Mistral was the place where it was seedy and everyone knew it was seedy, Vale is the place that is seedy, but no one wants to admit that it's seedy.
Exactly.
And it has a nice kind of...
And so somebody else asked, how do you find the origins of Neo and Roman compared to Cinder and Adam? I feel like it's better. I feel like that this
I
is
really
better.
liked Roman. I really liked Adam. I feel like they didn't tell.
Yeah.
I feel like you kind of get that with Roman, where he just
honestly,
like,
this may be
mentions it.
controversial. I'd rather have seen Adam's backstory than Cinder's at this point. Seeing what we got for Cinder, I would have liked to see. But anyway, and so are they similar upbringing? So that's an interesting question. No, it's not. Not really.
It was neglect, but different types of neglect.
And there is a big difference in motives, I would say. So how much of the story is written from Neo's perspective versus a narratorial focus? So I'm assuming that means, like, third person. Yeah. It's pretty much like a balance in her chapters. Like, sometimes you hear her internal thoughts, but sometimes it will say, like she looked at this, right? Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? It's not like
it's like third person in the book.
Yeah, it's third person with, like, a sprinkle of, like, her internal thoughts in it. It's kind of hard to explain. It's not first person. It's not like Neo did the thing. You know what I mean? What was your favorite aspect of the book? I think for me it was... Okay, so this person said backstory, character interaction, setting, or a mix. I think it was, like, the chemistry between Roman and Neo for sure. I think that was my favorite. And just the way they wrote their particular voice and how they interacted with people. I did, like, the criminal stuff, like, when they did get to the criminal stuff. And I found that there, again, like, some of the parts that we were previously criticizing, like this boarding school, actually did get interesting.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It did go past, oh, that's kind of sexist that they, you know, that this is a boarding school for girls.
Well, like I said,
all the girl
it gets
things,
more
right?
interesting after that halfway point.
And so, yeah, a couple people asked, is it essential reading or is it superfluous? Yeah, and so, I think that, like, you should read it if you are a RWBY. This was like You All Right. You All Right, you should read the books. You're a RWBY tuber. No, that's not a call out. If you're a RWBY tuber, you should read the books. Right?
I think it's good.
As for the average person, like, it's really, like, kind of
It's not necessary. If you don't like to read, don't, like torture yourself with it. Get an audiobook or something. But I think it was really nice supplementary material.
Yeah, I think that it's, like, it's supplementary material.
It isn't necessary for the course.
It makes the
You won't be tested on this material.
Exactly. Like, well, you know, if you're a RWBY tuber, read the book. But, like, it makes the well deeper, but it doesn't build a new well, if that makes sense. Right? Like, again, like how important Neo was to Roman, I feel was, I don't want to say self-explanatory, but we already knew that. We knew how important. It's just like, this is the why. It deepens it, right? Does it make you invest in the characters outside of how much we were already invested in them? I think so. It's not just a story of how they met, right? Like, it's also a story of their life before. And so I feel like that you're kind of rooting for, like, Roman and Neo outside of their context, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, outside of how we know them now. So then Critter asked if we jump back and forth. I think I said this before, but yeah, it's chronological order basically. But it's not like, again, we see in the first chapter, Neo is 12 while Roman's 18. It's not chronological, like, you know, that's both where they were, if that makes sense, because that would make them like a 10-year age gap or something. It's not like, or I think actually Neo's 8 in the first chapter, Roman's 18. Like, it starts where their story starts.
Yes.
And then builds up to the point where they intersect, but it's not chronological as in like the Roman and Neo chapter both start here in the timeline.
Yes.
It's more like if this is Roman and this is Neo, we just see more of Neo's childhood than Roman because Roman did not have an interesting childhood, basically. I hope that helps, you know what I mean? Maybe we can make a little timeline graphic or something, but yeah, that's basically what I'm thinking is like, it's called segmented, right? It's
like
not aligned. You know what I mean? These don't move on the same track.
You see Neo's and Roman's background, but they don't happen at the same point.
Yeah, exactly.
They're like staggered.
You know, it's kind of going like this, and then Neo like kind of runs up in speed to meet where like Roman is, if that makes sense. And then somebody asked, what kind of look do we get into Neo's semblance? Awakening of it? Any new details about it? Yes. And so I think that that's basically it. I think that that's everything that people wanted to know. So I hope that that's helpful. Again, you know, I just wanted to answer some questions. I did not expect for it to be this long. I'm so sorry. I mean, a little sprinkle of editing, you know. But yeah, I think overall, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I enjoyed the book. I think that I was a little shaky at the beginning, but I found that I really liked it. I liked how it presented Roman and Neo. I liked how it gave them a kind of little mini arc. I enjoy how it built up the world. It was a good time.
Yeah, and so I can't wait to talk to you guys about it when we can talk about spoilers, because then I'll be like, what? Like, what's this? Like, what is this? But, you know, again, I think I like the other two better, but
I think they're about the same level with me.
Yeah,
personally.
I mean, I personally liked After the Fall and Before the Dawn better, but that's just me, you know what I mean? And I feel like that's, again, just by virtue of, like, some of Neo's life, like I mentioned earlier. You know, some of Neo's life is just like, oh, I walked into Riverdale. Oh, no. It's
I think maybe the other books are paced better.
Yeah, or paced more, like, I feel like that this book could have used, like, putting some of Neo's backstory, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. A reorganization,
basically. I think that it could have used a little reorganization. Like, what am I trying to say? Not either or. Like, every other chapter maybe could have been backstory, while the other chapters could have been present.
Mixing up the chronology of it.
Yeah, and I know that probably would have confused the fuck out of people.
And it probably would have to change the plot a little bit, but I don't know. It's just an idea. But then again, still did a good job.
Yeah, I think that it was good. And I would, like, now that we've gotten these, I do want to see, like, Hazel and Tyrion and Watts.
I really want a Happy Huntress.
I know
I would love another one of Neo. I'd love another one of Coffee.
Because I feel like that this does open the door to have a 2. Like, where they left it, they could do more things before Team RWBY gets here, right?
With at the end of After the Fall, you see Shade, and you're like, oh, they're going to be in Shade.
Yeah.
You know if they made a second book, it would be in Shade.
Right?
It's more ambiguous, like, oh, they're now criminals and they can go around.
I feel like they could definitely do it.
But also, Happy Huntresses, it's right there.
Because there's definitely still some stuff that they could... Okay, so, I don't know. This is hard to... There are some unanswered questions with, like, the Malachites and then the junior stuff specifically, where I could see that being, like, another book. Because there are some, let's just call it turf. Like, not turf like,
Wars.
not that turf.
Not
like,
J.K. Rowling.
Not J.K. Rowling.
Different YA
like, turf
book.
wars that have not necessarily been resolved, I guess you could say. Right? So I feel like that could definitely, they could do another one maybe. But yeah, I think that it'll be interesting to see people's reception to this one. Thank you for attending Collections Royal Court today for our little discussion, our non-spoiler discussion. I hope that answered some of y'all's questions, and we will see you for a couple of things. We're gonna do a couple of videos about the book, I think. Probably a spoiler discussion next. So, like, get the book, or at least, like, I don't know, like, find somebody to tell you what's in the book so you can watch our video later, so we can discuss everything book related, I guess. So yes, we will